skeletal muscle physiology, and we are going to discuss the characteristics of skeletal muscle contraction. Previously, we have seen the mechanism of muscle contraction and the physiological structure of the skeletal muscles as well. This lecture is going to have an overview of the characteristics of muscle contraction, including those in front of you, the length tension relationship, load velocity relationship, energetics, isotonic versus isometric contraction, types of muscle fibers, and the concept of the latency of the muscle contraction. We will begin with the discussion of the length tension relationship, an important aspect of the characteristic of skeletal muscle contraction. In the image, you can see on x-axis, there is the length of the sarcomere in relation with the tension developed in the muscle cell on the y-axis. Basically, the tension develops in the skeletal muscle fibers when it changes in its length, and we suppose as the length changes, the more the length shortens, there might be more the tension developed in the skeletal muscle fiber. But this relationship is not as simple. As you can see in this graph, at the extremes of the length, the tension developed is less at a shorter length and at a larger length, whereas the tension developed is more at the middle of the graph. So let's have a look what happens when we change the length of the sarcomere and how does it impact the tension developed in the muscle cell fibers. So we will start our discussion from the point D. If the resting length of the skeletal muscle fiber when it starts contracting is at point D, that is much elongated than the normal skeletal muscle fiber length, the tension developed will be minimum. So can you appreciate why is it minimum by looking at this? Simply, the actin fibers have gone so apart that the myosin fibers and cross bridges can no more interact with the actin filament. When there will be no actin-myosin interaction, there would be no shortening and there will be no tension developed in the skeletal muscle fiber. As we keep on decreasing the muscle fiber length from point D to point C, the actin and myosin interaction starts coming into an optimum overlap that leads to increase in the development of the tension until we reach at the point C. This is the point which we call as the optimum length of the skeletal muscle. Now, what is optimum length? Optimum length of skeletal muscle fiber is that length at which the tension developed is maximum. That is point C and point B. Now, why the tension developed at point C and point B is maximum? This is because at this point, the actin and myosin interaction is most adequate, leading to the maximum cross-bridge interaction between the two types of the filament. The more the interaction, the more there will be cross-bridge cycling and the better tension there would be developed. If we now decrease the muscle fiber length more from point B to point A, the tension developed decreases, and below this point A, it starts decreasing even more till the tension would be decreased to the negligible. Now, why is that so? Again, have a look at this point A. At this point A, now the actin fibers have started overlapping each other. Now, again, the adequacy of interaction between the actin and myosin filaments will decrease. This portion of actin filament will no more be capable of interacting with the cross bridges. So, again, the tension developed would be start decreasing. This is the length tension relationship. That is, the tension developed would be maximum if there is maximum interaction between the actin and myosin filaments, and this is going to be maximum at the optimum length of the sarcomere, and this is going to decrease if you elongate or if you contract the sarcomere beforehand. And this range from B to C is from 2 micrometer to 2.2 micrometer of the sarcomere. More than this or less than this, in both directions, the tension developed would be less, and this range is known as optimum length of the skeletal muscle fibers. So, muscle tension depends upon the degree of overlap and it is peaking at the optimum overlap, approximately 2 to 2.2 micrometer. The resting length of the skeletal muscles, overstretching or overshortening will reduce this force. Point D, there is no overlap. Tension developed is 0. Increasing overlap from D to C to B, tension is increasing. From B to A, it is again decreasing. Extreme shortening, it will again approach 0. And optimum length or resting length, both nomenclatures are used for the tension developed peak. This is another image showing the same concept for your consolidation. Now, let's add a little more complexity to this length tension relationship. What we just discussed in the previous image was the length tension relationship of an actively contracting skeletal muscle fiber. For example, you move your hand in supine position and you flex your bicep muscle. This is an active contraction. Whereas there is another concept of passive contraction of the skeletal muscle. Now, what is the passive tension development in the skeletal muscle fiber? Let's have a look. Active tension will be developed when the muscle fibers are actively contracting and there is active interaction between the thick and the thin filaments. Whereas the passive tension developed in the skeletal muscle fiber would be because of the length of the muscle fiber. Either the skeletal muscle is already elongated, either it is at resting state, already contracted. That will decide the state of the muscle fiber length, and that will decide the passive tension in that skeletal muscle fiber. To understand, let's have a look again at this image. X-axis is showing the length of the muscle fiber, while the Y-axis is again showing the tension developed in the muscle fiber. There are now two curves, red curve and the blue curve. The red curve is showing the total tension developed in the muscle fiber, whereas the blue curve is showing the passive tension in the skeletal muscle fiber, which is unrelated to its contraction but related to its length. So let's have a look one by one. If we look at the blue curve, as much as the length of the muscle fiber is increasing, the passive tension in the skeletal muscle fiber is increasing. And this is the tension that developed before contraction. Either you started your contraction at this point, or this point, or whichever point, the skeletal muscle fiber will be having some degree of passive tension inside. When you start contracting the skeletal muscle fiber at different lengths, it will develop active contraction and active tension, and that will vary again with its length. And this is at its peak at the normal or optimum length. This is again decreasing at overstretching or over contracting. Maximum total tension is again at its peak at normal, resting length or optimal length. Active tension is generated by actin-myosin interaction. Passive tension is simply because of stretching of the connective tissue. Total tension is a combination of active and passive tension. Either we talk about active tension or we talk of total tension, the length tension relationship is approximately the same. The tension is going to be maximum at the optimum or normal resting length, that is 2 to 2.2 micrometer, and it will decrease on both extremes, overstretching or over shortening. Now, here comes the practical insight of this length tension relationship. Overstretched or overly contracted muscle will have a weaker contraction. For example, if you are lifting a heavy weight, you will be lifting it easily at your resting muscle length rather than if you have outstretched your hand already and then you are trying to lift a weight. It will be more difficult as compared to a non-stretched hand. That's all about the length tension relationship. Next is the load velocity relationship. It's quite simple. The more the load the muscle is trying to lift, the less will be the velocity of contraction. The less the load, the more the velocity. Again, it's not a straight line relationship, but still a simplistic relationship. The more the load, the less the velocity of contraction. Next, we are going to discuss the energetics of muscle contraction. Of course, the muscle needs ATP or energy for the skeletal muscle contraction, and using that energy, it performs some work. Now, what is the work performed by the skeletal muscle? As we know in physics, the work performed is equal to load into distance. In case of skeletal muscle, load is what the skeletal muscle is moving. For example, you are lifting a heavy bucket full of water, that is your load, and how much you lift is the distance moved, and this will be the total work that your skeletal muscle has performed. And energy comes from the ATP. ATP is used for cross-bridge cycling, for calcium reuptake, for sodium-potassium ATPase, and many more. The stored ATP in the skeletal muscle is only there for 1 to 2 seconds, and if you have to perform a prolonged sustained activity, you need a sustained source of energy that is continuously providing ATP to use. And this is happening by way of 3 systems in the skeletal muscle: phosphocreatinin system, anaerobic glycolysis, and oxidative metabolism. We will have a look at all 3 of these one by one. Starting from the phosphocreatinin system, it is a high energy phosphate donor as that of ATP. It has 3 phosphate bonds attached to it in high energy, 2 high energy bonds, whereas phosphocreatinin has 1 phosphate high energy bond attached to it, and it can provide quickly a lot of energy to convert ATP to ATP, but this is very rapid and short-lived. This can only provide energy to produce ATP for 5 to 8 seconds in the skeletal muscles. Next, we have another energetic system, which is anaerobic glycolysis. It simply breaks down glycogen to pyruvic or lactic acid and produces ATP without even oxygen. This is much faster than that of the oxidative metabolism, but it can only supply energy for 30 to 60 seconds, not more than that, and also it results in building up of the lactic acid, which leads to the muscle fatigue. The most sustained provision of energy is by the oxidative metabolism that uses oxygen for catabolization of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And it can provide energy for hours to sustain the muscle work. And for 2 to 4 hours, it uses carbohydrates and stored fats. Afterwards, if the utilization is still sustained, the utilization of fats is more as compared to the carbohydrates for the oxidative metabolism. Now, if oxidative metabolism is that much good or that much strengthful, then why do we need the other 2 systems, the anaerobic glycolysis and phosphocreatinin, although short-lived but can rapidly provide energy? So in case of those muscular activities which require short burst of energy, for example, long jump, you need short burst, rapid resourceful energy. There the phosphocreatinin and anaerobic glycolysis will play their role. Whereas there is a marathon runner who has to run for longer period of times, there the phosphocreatinin and anaerobic glycolysis system will fail. Rather, oxidative metabolism will be providing sustained source of energy. So oxidative metabolism is mostly used at rest and during lighter exercises. And this is a comparison of all 3 sources of energy, their speed, their duration, need of oxygen, and the byproducts that produced. Next, we will compare the isotonic versus isometric contraction of the skeletal muscle, a very important conceptual aspect in the characteristics of skeletal muscle contraction. Isotonic versus isometric. And here I would need some correction. This is a typographical error. This is isometric. Okay. Please give me a minute. I will correct this error. So, isotonic contraction, as the name is evident, iso means same and tonic means tone. In isotonic contraction, the tension will remain constant and the muscle length will change. That is, the muscle will shorten. As you can see, the muscle has shortened, but the load is constant. That is why the tension is constant. The afterload constant, tension constant, and the length has changed. Whereas in isometric contraction, metric means length, the length of the skeletal muscle is constant, but the load has increased or the tension has increased from here to here. So these are two types of muscle contractions. Somewhere in our body, skeletal muscles use isotonic contraction for some type of activities, and some other time the skeletal muscles may require to have some isometric contraction depending upon the type of activity we are performing. So let's have a look at these two one by one. Isotonic contraction, the tone is constant, afterload is constant, and the muscle has shortened. Muscle shortens while lifting a fixed load. For example, you are lifting a heavy bucket full of water from ground to your shoulder, and you are shortening your muscles, but the afterload which you are lifting is still constant. Tension is constant, afterload is constant, muscle is shortening, length is shortening. Another example is in your daily life, when you are walking around, your muscles are shortening, but your weight is constant, gravity is constant, afterload is constant. Isotonic contractions can be of two types. Concentric contraction, when the muscle is changing its length and shortening, for example, while lifting a dumbbell. Or eccentric contraction, when the muscle is elongating while contracting. For example, you are lowering a dumbbell, you are elongating your muscle while contracting at the same time. This type of isotonic contraction, in which load is constant, muscle length is changing, and changing, that is lengthening, is called as eccentric contraction. Now, this is a complex concept. How do the sarcomeres shorten while the muscle length increases? So, this is what requires more in-depth study that will be discussed in another session. We discussed the work performed by the muscle is equal to load multiplied by distance. In case of eccentric contraction, the muscle length is now increasing and the load is constant. The change in muscle length is in opposite direction. So this type of work performed is called as negative work performed, that the muscle is lengthening while shifting weight from one point to the other. Then there is isometric contraction. In this, the muscle length is constant while the weight can vary. Tension generation without muscle shortening. It is used to measure force without movement. For example, squatting. Useful in comparing muscle strength or types. This is common in postural muscles. For example, you are standing for a prolonged time, you are not walking, you are not moving, but you are constantly maintaining your weight against the gravity while maintaining the length of your postural muscles. Similarly, while these are, let's say, Guyton and Genong and Sherwood, 3 heavy physiology books, you are lifting them from the table to over here. While you were lifting, you were moving this weight from here to here and shortening your muscles. This was isotonic contraction. While you have lifted and you are maintaining them over here on your hands, all 3 balls, you are no more changing your muscle length. that is constant and you are just holding this weight, this is now isometric contraction. There comes a friend of yours and adds Snell's and Lippincott to it. The tension on your muscle has increased, but your skeletal muscle is still maintaining its length to not let move the weight or drop the books. And this type of muscle contraction, isometric contraction, is very useful to compare the muscle strengths. For example, two friends A and B, both having an outstretched hand and putting one book, both holding guidance. Then you added Ganongs over here, and then you added Sherwood over here. The friend A sustained this while the friend B couldn't, and he dropped all three books. So you compared the skeletal muscle strengths using this isometric contraction. If we compare these two types of contraction, length of muscle is constant in isometric contraction, whereas tension in muscle is constant in isotonic contraction. External work is done in case of isometric contraction, but zero in case of isotonic contraction. How it is zero? Sorry, again this is a typo. Let me fix this again. Okay, so the work done is equal to load into distance. In case of isometric contraction, when muscle doesn't shorten, there is no change in the length of the muscle. This will be equal to 0 and the work performed will be 0. Whereas case of isotonic contraction, the muscle shortens, the distance is moved and there is work performed. Then there come another concept of preload and afterload. Afterload is simply the load, the external load that you were moving. So this load is constant in case of isotonic contraction, where it can vary in case of isometric contraction. If you are lifting a book, you are lifting a weight, you are pulling a table, you are pushing a door, all these loads against which you are working, that is the afterload. And this load is the tone, the isotonic contraction is going to stay constant and may vary in case of isometric contraction. And the concept of preload, this applies to the passive tension in the skeletal muscle fiber produced due to the skeletal muscle fiber length. Now, the skeletal muscle fiber length is fixed in case of isometric contraction, so preload is not going to change. While the muscle fiber length is changing in isotonic contraction, so preload is also changing in case of the isotonic contraction. Now, there comes another tricky question. How can a muscle contract without an appreciable decrease in the muscle length? Again, a tricky concept that I will be discussing in a separate session. So, two complicated questions. How does eccentric contraction occurs? Muscle lengthens while contracting. And how does isometric contraction occurs? That muscle contracts but length doesn't change. So, keep following me to have the discussion of these two aspects as well. Now, the next characteristic of skeletal muscle contraction, that is the type of muscle fibers, fast versus slow muscle fibers. To get into this concept, let's have a look at this image. X-axis is showing the duration of the muscle contraction and the y-axis is showing the force of contraction. And you can see different muscle fibers, with muscles in the human body have different duration of skeletal muscle contraction. For example, soleus involved in posture, walking, it is having a slow pace of contraction, whereas the ocular muscle, this is at a very short pace of duration of muscle contraction. It is involved in blinking and fixation movements of the eye. So it is quite precise and quick. So what is deciding the durations of these muscle twitches? The size of the muscle, that fiber type, the function it is performing. So what we are going to focus right now is on this fiber type, that how is it impacting the duration of muscle contraction and the other characteristics as well. So muscle fibers are of two types, majorly slow and fast fibers. And Fast fibers are further of two types, fast oxidative and fast glycolytic, and there is another nomenclature used for them, type 1, type 2A, and type 2X. Now, how are these types produced? Because of the different isoforms of the myosin heavy chains, the muscle fibers may vary into these three different types. Now, we will compare these three different types. First of all, by the name is evident, slow twitch fibers and fast twitch fibers will be having different durations of the muscle contraction. Number 2, you can see the histological appearance. The fast oxidative fibers and the slow oxidative fibers, they are red-orange in appearance as they have better blood supply, whereas the glycolytic fibers are more yellow in appearance as they have less blood supply. Other features are these, which we are going to compare in between these muscle fiber types. The slow fibers are all oxidative fibers. Fast fibers may be oxidative and glycolytic, and depending upon oxidative and glycolytic capacity, you can guess all these characteristics. For example, the fast fibers will be having a faster myosin ATPase activity as compared to the slow fibers, of course, because they have to attach and detach more quickly. Speed of contraction, of course, fast fibers will have more resistance to fatigue. Of course, slow fibers will have more resistance as they are oxidative. Oxidative phosphorylation capacity, of course, more in oxidative fibers. Anaerobic glycolysis enzyme, of course, more in glycolytic fibers. Mitochondria are required for oxidative capacity, not for glycolytic. So, of course, more in oxidative fibers. Capillaries are going to provide oxygen. So, again, more in the oxidative type of fibers. Myoglobin is having stored oxygen, again required by the oxidative fibers. Color of fiber, where there is more blood supply, is red to orange, and there is less, that is white-yellow appearance. Glycogen content, of course, is going to be more in the glycolytic fibers. So simply by knowing the fast fibers are oxidative and fast fibers glycolytic and slow fibers are oxidative, you can guess all these characteristics of the muscle fibers. So next comes my question. Are these muscle fiber types interconvertible? So if you want to know the answer, again, keep following, or you can give it a read from the Sherwood. Last characteristic of skeletal muscle contraction is latency of muscle contraction. That is evident by this graph. Here comes the electrical activity, the action potential. But the skeletal muscle fiber, it starts contracting a few milliseconds after even the action potential is over, slowly reaches its peak of contraction, and then there is relaxation after about 100 milliseconds. So this gap between the electrical activity and the initiation of contractile activity is known as the latency of muscle contraction. And this is the time taken by the excitation contraction coupling that we will be discussing in the coming up lectures. So that's all about the characteristics of skeletal muscle contraction. For difficult aspects, you can contact me by this email or the contact number. Thank you very much for listening.